Hello, beautiful soul. So for our lesson today, what we're diving into is the fact that we are operating with multiple pasts within our history. And it's a little bit of an unusual concept, but the more we can embrace that we actually have multiple that we're looking at, the easier it becomes to create that space for healing. So the first past that we are carrying baggage from is the one we remember. And that's the one actually that, not to say that of course our memory isn't important of situations, but it is good to know that when you start looking into neurobiology, our memories are very faulty, especially after a year's time. So oftentimes what we remember is half of the time inaccurate. Now that doesn't mean what we've experienced or the impact of those emotions isn't valid and something that we need to process, but we also want to face reality that the conscious mind does not remember the majority of details. And this is a very weird thing to have to think about. But again, when you look into the science behind it, it starts making a lot of sense. Now, our subconscious mind, in the realm that I work with a lot with past life regression, deep trance hypnotherapy, the conscious mind remembers everything to minute detail, the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind is able to retain it all, but we're frequently not accessing that one. Unless you're doing specific kind of regression work to access that, then it's a bit different. But it's fascinating because in the work that I've done, when people will stay in this life or they'll go to a memory in this life, because some people don't believe in past lives, and that's totally fair. When they stay in this life, they see those memories in so much more vivid detail. Because if I ask you to hey, remember your childhood house, you'll say, yeah, mine was brick and it was one level and it had a porch or a two-car not garage, but patio. And, we get some of the vague details. But when you're in that subconscious space where it's showing you that memory, it's beige brick that was with a two-car patio or garage, not garage, but patio. But there were a lot of stains on the cement. I remember that vividly. And we had red gravel in the front yard and this lemon tree that always produced. It was tiny. It was 6 feet tall, but it produced a ton of lemons. And you start realizing the things that come back to you and how you describe them are so much more vivid. And that goes on for the whole regression. So there's another past. We have our subconscious past that we can't access, but it's a little bit of work. We have our memory, our conscious past, and that's the one that we're looking to heal. But here's the thing, again, if we're remembering things faultily, which again makes life a little bit tricky, then what we also need to realize is what actually happened. That past is only available to the conscious mind of God or of the universe. What actually happened in that situation where you were deeply impacted? Because from that perspective, all information is available from all the participants at play. If it's your parents, if it's an attacker, if it's yourself, whatever it is, all of those things are seen and known. And that information can also be accessed as well, but it's a little bit more tricky and not really relevant to what we need for you for your healing. So there is the general actual past of what happened in its full entirety. We have the past we remember and the subconscious past. Well, the most important past we're looking to now bring into life and bring into light for your life is actually the past we want to create. The past we want to, not to nullify what we remember by any stretch, but to actually start that healing process. Because whenever we heal and we remove a charge from a memory, we're actually creating a new past, a new version of that past in our mind. So it's always funny to me because when people are like, how can we be multidimensional beings? I'm like, just you being here right now makes you a multidimensional being, just with what you're carrying with you. And I'm only scratching the surface of these versions of the past. But when we heal, again, we're going to create and engage with a new reality. We're going to carry a new past because, again, if you're doing that gratitude, humility, and forgiveness practice, you're starting to see that, yeah, you may not be remembering everything accurately. Or maybe you do. Maybe you have an eidetic memory and you remember everything all the time, everywhere, which there are trade-offs to things. So I'm sorry if that's happening to you because that makes life a little bit more tricky sometimes. But when we create perspective in that healing process of the past, we actually now put an overlay of the past that we remember, and we separate ourselves from it, and we start seeing it from that higher vantage point again of saying, hey, did my parent do the best they could with what they had, given the amount of information, awareness, resources, and energy they had in that moment? Also, please remember that your parent in that moment is not the same person they are in this moment. We tend to get ourselves into trouble by either expecting them to behave differently because they're the same, or they're a totally different person, but we keep them stuck in the past. Or you've probably experienced this where parents have kept you as a child for far too long, and maybe still do. But within that, we get to really start playing with and seeing and creating that space to create a new way of approaching things so that you are not weighed down by the past anymore, because you've engaged with it, you've looked at it, you recognize it from many different perspectives of, okay, yeah, in humility, we have to recognize what we remember, one, is probably not entirely what happened, and we don't have all the information because we aren't God. Two, we then also have to recognize that, some of our charges, some of our memories and that faulty memory, it may be the fisherman's story where, they caught a fish this big, and then it gets bigger, and then it gets bigger, because that's how, when we have an emotional charge to a memory, that's what happens, is the story gets bigger and bigger. Now, again, this is not to minimize what you've been through, but it's just to create awareness, like, hey, maybe I need to poke at the fact that this obviously impacted me, but is it as big as I thought it was? Or can I create that space to start seeing it from a new perspective and vantage? Because once you start being able to do that, that's where real healing happens. So the more we start doing this work, the more that we keep engaging with it, you're actually creating a new past that you now are able to bring forth with you, and it's a lot lighter. It's so much lighter to be able to remember that past and see it as an experience in your life that helped define you, some of your character, again, how strong you are. I will never minimize or underemphasize your strength. You had to be strong to be here. That's it. That's just the truth. And with that, though, then you can say, okay, I got it down. I'm going to use it as a tool to move forward versus the ankle ball and chain that you've been carrying around for the past how many decades. So it's a little bit of an unusual thing to play with, but the more and more, again, we recognize that there are multiple pasts involved in our history, that we can then start again creating that space to change them so we become that more empowered empath, the ultimate empath that we want to be. So take some time, reflect, see how that lands for you. If there's resistance, what we resist persists. There might be something in there for you. And then again, get to play with it, and you'll find this is going to give you, again, that space that we need more of to heal.